Alright, hey everybody. We're going to go through a quick video here and I'm going to show you guys my settings for my setup for my PC, for my Nvidia card, and for my game settings that I think work pretty well for me. I'll give you some tips and notes of what I've experienced along the way. This is going to be a down and dirty one because admittedly I've done this video a few times now and didn't realize that my audio was not working correctly. So I'm going to speed through it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment and I'll try to get back to you with the appropriate answers. Keep in mind that these settings may not work perfect for your system. I do have a brand new 3060 RTX card as well as a Ryzen 7 5800X. So I've got a pretty beefy system, so you might have to tinker with some of these for yours, but these work pretty well. So try them out, see what you think. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our power plan. A lot of systems are set to a balanced power plan, and for gaming we definitely want to get as much as we can out of there. So in your search bar down at the bottom, put down, just start searching for control panel and pull that up. That's probably the easiest way to get there. Once you get in there in the search bar, type in power. Oops, spell it right. And you will see power options. Click on that. And then make sure it's not on balance. Make sure it's on high performance. Like I said, the recommended setting here is balanced, but for game mode, we definitely want to favor the performance side of it. So set it up for performance, high performance, and leave it on there. That's that. Next, we want to go to power plan. Not power plan, game mode. So search for game. Oops, game. Sorry, I'm not used to this keyboard. I hardly ever use it. Mode, and click on game mode settings. And make sure that's turned on. It's going to optimize your PC for games. While you're in here, on the right-hand side, you'll see that it's under related settings. It says graphics settings. Click on that. And there's two options. The bottom one we're definitely going to do. So let's go ahead and do that. You'll click, make sure it's set on a desktop app. I think that's by default. Click browse and find your game. Most of the time by default it's going to be located on your C drive in the program files x86 under the Call of Duty Modern Warfare folder. Once you get there, make sure you're not choosing the launcher, just the Modern Warfare game itself. We don't care about the launcher. If you put them both in there independently, that's fine. It's not going to hurt anything, but we're focused on the Modern Warfare. So click add down here and you'll see it show up right down here. Once you do that, click it and you'll see an options button. Click on options and set that to high performance as well, and that's going to set your GPU to high performance from within Windows when you're playing this game. If you see a drop down here, just make sure that you have your video card that you use for gaming selected and hit save. That's it on there. I do want to touch on this setting above. This right here, hardware accelerated GPU, that's going to depend whether it helps or not per setup. On mine, I haven't really messed with it. I'm going to try it out, but for now I haven't because I've got a pretty beefy setup. But what this does is, as it stands in the off mode, your CPU handles all the scheduling for anything that needs to access the video card. So anytime you need to play a game or something needs to pop up on your screen or anything that's video card related needs to happen, your CPU bears that scheduling burden. And so if you turn this to off, from off to on, and it's in the on position, then your GPU is going to handle all of its own scheduling. So for those of you who've had a computer for 5 or 6 years or something like that and it's doing okay, but the GPU load is pretty heavy and you just went out and bought the brand new video card, then you might consider switching that on and let the GPU handle all the workload because it's so much beefier, obviously, than your 5-year-old system. So play around with that and see if it helps you out. You can always just go back and switch it on and off. It does require a PC restart for either turning it on or off, so just bear that in mind. The next thing we are going to do is setting the priority. You can navigate back to that same folder I was telling you about down here in File Manager, or you can just right click your launcher and go to Open File Location because they're in the same folder. But what we want to do is we want to right click on Modern Warfare. We're going to go to Properties. We're going to go to the Compatibility tab and we're going to turn this to Run this as Administrator. We're going to tick that box right there. I don't know that it's going to benefit. I mean, you're definitely not going to notice some FPS increase or anything like that. But running things as administrator, basically any hurdles you're going to have to jump over, any restrictions you might have as a regular user that might be set up that you don't know about, that's going to circumvent all those. Administrator is top dog. It has no restrictions. Nothing stops it from doing anything. So if you're running it as administrator, nothing's ever going to hold you back. So I always run my games as administrator. side note, if you are streaming on the same PC, just as a precautionary measurement, I might go to Streamlabs, do the same thing to it, right click it, go to compatibility and run it as administrator as well. If you're running one program such as your Streamlabs or your OBS or something as regular user and running your game as administrator, there could be an issue. I've not experienced it, but I had somebody having some issues with watching, getting their video to show up in Streamlabs. Turned out not to be this, but it made me think about it anyway. So you might run them both as administrator just to make sure that you don't have any issues between the two. Like I said, but you probably won't. There's also a change high DPI settings in here. Once you get in there, you'll see a high DPI scaling override. You can check this box and set it to application and let your application control your DPI scaling. I've heard pros and cons to both of this. I don't know what's true and what's not, so for now I'm going to leave it off. But bear in mind, some people say that it's basically the crispness of everything, and some people have said that it helps with their reticle view when they're ADSing. And so you can try it out and see if that does help. But I've also heard some people say when that's enabled, they're getting some heavy RAM usage. So again, I'm sure it's dependent on the system, so you can try that out if you want. For now, I'm going to leave it off. So the next thing we're going to do as far as the PC goes is make sure that when you're starting up your game, always turn off anything in your taskbar down here that you're not going to be using for the game. I've only got stuff that's video card related and stuff from my keyboard and stuff like that turned on. Everything else I turn off. Every little bit helps. There's already enough running on your PC. You don't need anything else running down there. In addition to that, Chrome is a biggie. If you're not streaming or you're not running some type of companion app alongside, then make sure you have your Chrome turned off for a couple of reasons. One, it eats up RAM, and we all know that. And so if you've got it off, you're going to save some RAM for usage in your game. And secondly, not only does it eat up RAM, it eats up a lot of RAM because even if you've got one tab open on your system, for every extension that you have installed on your Chrome, that counts as a process that's running in the background. So even though you just open up your Chrome and it's just sitting there on your Facebook screen or something like that with one tab open, if you were to pull up your task manager and look at that, there's actually going to be several processes running for your Chrome. Let me see if I can see it in here. Details. I'm not going to scroll through this whole thing and look for it, but anyway, it's going to say, you know, Chrome, and then next to it, it's going to say you have umpteen processes out to the side. And if you go in and look, you'll notice it out to the right-hand side of your Google Chrome, that it's going to have several different services running, instances, that is, of it. And so for every, what's it called, add-on or extension that you've got installed, whether you're using it at the time or not, that's how many instances are going to be running there. I don't know why mine's not showing up. It's because I've got it running on my other PC here. So I don't have Chrome running on here. But just to give you a quick little task manager, there it is, 21. I literally just opened it up and I've got 20 instances of Chrome running. There they are. So keep that in mind. It's going to eat up your RAM. So if you don't have to run it, don't. As well as extra monitors. For every monitor you have in addition to the one you're playing your game on, it's going to eat up on your GPU. So if you don't have to have the side monitors running, if you're not streaming and you don't have to have a companion app, then go into your graphics settings by right-clicking out in the middle of your screen, go to display settings, and disable those additional monitors. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to fire up Modern Warfare here, and we're going to set one more priority to high performance as we can. And so I'm going to click play on this. This is the screen that's going to pop up from now on once you set that to run as administrator. It'll pop up every time. It just wants to make sure you know you're going to make changes to this game, and then just click yes. Side note, once this gets done saying launching, it's loading, so I turn it off. That's just one less thing. I don't need Battle.net running in the background while I'm running the game. If you do, then go ahead, but that's just one less thing to be running while the game's running. Okay, so here's my Warzone. I've got it started up. What you're going to do is you're going to get out of that screen, whether you want to Control, Delete, whether you want to Alt, Enter, however you do that. Get your screen size smaller. There we go. And I'm just going to minimize it so I can get back to my taskbar here. If you hit Control Delete, you'll already have the option for Task Manager. If you did what I did and just minimized it, then right-click down here and go to Task Manager. And you want to find your Call of Duty Modern Warfare over in your Processes tab. And if you right-click it and go to Details, it's going to take you straight to the Details tab with this already selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click it and go down to Set Priority and make sure it's set to High. I check this every time I start the game because sometimes it'll default back to normal, but you want to keep it set to at least high. I've not tried real time. It was something that didn't exist for a long time, and now they have it in here, but you know, high's good enough for me for now. I don't know anything else that's running real time. So set this to high priority, and that's basically setting your CPU usage to high. And what I mean by that is all these things that are running here right now in the background, anytime they need to run, they just run. There's no order set to them except for that priority. And so since I have my Modern Warfare set as high priority, if it needs to run and something else needs to run, the game gets priority first. So anytime that CPU needs to be used, my game gets top call before anything else. So like I said, check it every time you start it up. It's not that big a deal. It takes 5 seconds. Make sure it's set to high priority, and it'll get first dibs anytime the CPU needs to be used. Next, Nvidia control panel. Jump into there real quick. These I'm just going to go through. You can take them or leave them. First thing I want to do is check my resolution. Make sure you have your monitor selected. Make sure it's set to your native resolution of your monitor. Make sure your refresh rate is set to your refresh rate of your monitor. Mine's 165 Hertz, so I've selected it over here. Under Manage 3D Settings, you can change these under Global if you want, but it's going to affect everything you do. I typically go to Program Settings, hit Add. Again, I'll find my game. If it's not listed there, I'll go to Browse and find it on my C drive and select Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And that way, these settings only affect when I'm playing the game. So here they are. Image sharpening, turn it off. Anisotropic filtering, application controlled. Everything that's in the app, everything that's in the Modern Warfare that has a setting, I want to put that to application controlled that I can think of. I may have missed something, but I don't want to set it in here. And even if they're the same in here as in the game, I don't want the system to have to check both places. And this is more of an input lag. Some of these things aren't going to affect your CPU. Some of these things aren't going to affect your FPS. But some of these things are going to affect your input lag. And they may not be significant. They may be minimal to the point where you don't notice them at all. Input lag is hard to detect. It's measured in milliseconds. But all these added up together lessen your input lag enough to hopefully where you can be on par with some of the quicker playing players. And this is an impact lag feature that I'm talking about as far as setting this to application controlled and then let the Warzone game figure it out. Anti-aliasing, gamer correction, turn that on. Anti-aliasing mode, application controlled. Anti-aliasing transparency, set that to off. Background application max frame rate, set that to off. Your CUDA GPUs, as well as my global setting, but especially in the game here, I've had it set to all. Low latency mode I have set to ultra. You can set it to on if you want, but I have a high Nvidia card, so I'm going to set it to ultra as well. And so basically, this is going to be different from the reflex latency that you have in game. And I'll talk about that once I get in there. But low latency mode, ultra. Max frame rate, we don't want to limit that, so that's set to off. Obviously, make sure, I skipped one, monitor technology. I do have G-Sync compatible. I have it enabled right now. I haven't tinkered with it enough to know if it's affecting screen tearing versus slowing my system down enough to keep things synced. So for now, I have G-Sync turned on. I'll talk about that a little more when I talk about the V-Sync in there. OpenGL rendering GPU, obviously make sure you have your video card selected that you use for your game. Power management, prefer maximum performance. You want that set on. Preferred refresh rate, let that be application controlled. Shader cache on. Texture filtering for your anisotropic sample optimization, turn that to off. Texture filtering for your negative LOD bias, turn that to allow. Texture filtering for quality, set that to high quality. Texture filtering for your trilinear optimization, turn that on. Threaded optimization, you want that set to auto. triple buffering set to off, and your vertical sync you want set to use the 3D application settings. These two bottom, it doesn't matter. We don't use virtual reality, so you can leave those what they are, but I've got mine set to 1. So that's it for your Nvidia settings. So I'm going to shut that off. I'm going to pull the game up. I'll show you the game settings here. Graphics. Okay, so there's been some controversy over whether picking full screen or full screen borderless. I've been recently going with full screen. It may be dependent on your system, but I can tell you this. I switched to full screen and my GPU usage went down. I switched back to full screen borderless and my GPU usage went up by about 25%. So I'm running full screen. The only reason you might consider running it, other than it affects your system differently than mine, is on full screen borderless. If you're running multiple monitors, you can just go edge to edge all the way across your monitors. Once you're on full screen, you can see that my mouse stops here on the corners, and you can't get out without alt tabbing or doing something like that. So that's the only downfall to full screen versus full screen borderless, is if you're running multiple monitors, it's going to be difficult to get to your other screens. So display monitor, obviously you want your gaming monitor set up. Display adapter, obviously you want your video card set up. Your screen refresh rate, you want set to the same as your gaming monitor, which is 165 for me. Render resolution, which is odd because mine keeps changing, so make sure you check this all the time, but you want your render resolution set to 90 or 100. Think of this as a percentage. You don't want to go above your native render resolution, so you got to stick around 100. I've seen a lot of impact from other players from switching this to 90, which is just 10% less. I haven't noticed, as far as my gaming goes, any significant difference when I'm viewing the players or the map enough to where I need to bump that back up to 100. But I've been told, and I feel like I noticed there's some difference in my FPS a little bit when I bump that down to 90. So it's something you'll have to play with on your individual system, but if you can stand going down a little bit from 100 to 90, then I would definitely give that a try. And definitely keep checking back on this, because I've consistently been switching this back to 90 or 100 and it keeps changing. So check that every time. Aspect ratio you want set to automatic. VSync, I have this disabled. You can play around with that. To me, this is one of these input lag things. Not so much going to affect your FPS, and maybe not so much going to affect your CPU, but VSync, what it does is it prevents screen tearing. If you're moving too fast and your screen may seem like it's tearing or blurring a little bit, and that's supposed to prevent that. But as far as I can tell, the way that it prevents that is by slowing down either what you're seeing on your screen or what's coming from the game in order to sync these things up. And I don't want to risk that, so I keep it disabled. It's up to you. Try it out. Custom frame rate, you can leave this on off or disabled or unlimited or whatever it is. But I do have mine on custom just because I have my menu frame rate set down. I don't want my fans kicking on and my system going all out just to put out 250 frames a second in my menu. So that's why I have mine set to custom. Nvidia highlights, I have mine disabled. That's personal preference. I don't use it. Nvidia reflex low latency. This is going to be another input lag type deal. I've been told by a lot of people that the Nvidia's reflex low latency version of this is kind of similar to the VSync, in that in order to make things optimized, and I know this sounds like an oxymoron, but it ends up slowing things down in order to prevent latency. So I don't know enough about it. I do know my system can keep up and it doesn't have any latency, and I'm not going to change anything that's running in the background to try and boost something that I don't need boosted. So for now, I'm going to stick with what some of the professionals I've heard say and keep it disabled. And if I find out otherwise that it's super beneficial, then I'll let you guys know in a comment or tack onto the video that you should enable this. Display gaming, you're going to want to keep it 2.2 unless you're running on a television. 2.2 is made for monitors. Streaming quality, normal. Texture resolution, high. This is for my setup. If you have a nice video card, bump these up as high as you can. You can see over in the screen to the right what it's going to do as far as visuals. If you can bump them up, bump them up. If you've got a low-end video card and you can't, basically just keep tacking these things down until you can find a happy medium in there, something you can live with, but you're still getting some pretty decent frames per second out of there. And you can see this texture resolution is very hard on your VRAM, your video card. So it makes a big difference when you're coming to FPS on this. So you can put it up as high as you can. I can max mine out because I'm on 12. But if you can't do that, then just tweak them down until you got to stop. Texture filter, anisotropic, I have that on normal. Particle quality, I have it on low. Bullet impacts and sprays, I have it enabled. Tessellation, I have it disabled. A few of these right here are going to be input lag. They're not going to help your FPS. They're not going to really tear up your GPU usage that much. It's going to be personal preference. But keep in mind, if it's something that you're not going to notice with your eye, I mean, look at these visuals on the right. I'm not a video phobe where I have to have everything perfect. That's not something I'm going to notice when people are shooting me in the face or blowing me up, is whether the particles are perfect or not. So I'd rather take the chance and get the low input lag versus seeing fine-tuned speckles flying at my face. Same way with the bullet and impact sprays and stuff. So tessellation, I said disabled. On-demand texture streaming, leave that to disabled. That does not affect your map. That does not affect anything except the skins on your operators, the high-resolution skins on your operators, and the high-resolution skins or camos on your guns. So unless you really need to see a more detailed version of the camo on a gun or a more detailed version of the zippers on operator, then leave that to disabled. It's just gonna, it can do nothing but hurt you as far as having to be downloading, and it's on-demand download. It's not like it gets it before the game starts. It downloads it while your game is playing. So if you're okay with downloading shit in the background while you're trying to reduce as much impact or input lag as you can, then turn it on. But I would definitely keep that disabled if I were you. Show map resolution, normal. Cache spot shadows, disabled. Cache sun shadows, disabled. Particle lighting, low. Again, some of these things will affect your VRAM usage a little bit, but mostly their input lag. DirectX ray tracing, disabled. Sorry, it doesn't work in Warzone. If you're playing multiplayer and you want to try turning it on, playing with it, then go ahead. But in Warzone, it is not available, so don't turn it on. Ambient occlusion, disabled. SSR on low. Filmic strength 1. Skip this one for now because I'm going to come back and talk about the DLSS. Anti-aliasing, that's personal preference. You can turn it off. To me, it makes it very choppy. Everything looks jagged edged, and I just can't deal with it. So I keep mine on SMAA2TX or Filmic SMAA2TX. If you can stand it being off, then that would be great as well, but I cannot, so I have to have it on. Depth of field, I have mine disabled. That's personal preference, but I don't want my system to have to fake a blurry screen when I'm out of focus on something. I could care less. World motion blur, same way, disabled. Weapon motion blur, same way, disabled. Film grain, 0. Dynamic resolution and dynamic resolution target frame rate, don't worry about because you're going to have the one up here disabled. Basically what that does is you can set it and say, hey, I always want to be running 100 frames a second. If you can't run that, then I need you to change my resolution above. And for some reason, I'm wondering if that has something to do with the glitch up here of changing my render resolution up here, even though it's disabled and set to 60. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll just gotta crank this up to like 180 or something like that, just in case. But maybe that has something to do. Maybe they've got something wrong, a bug in it or something. So definitely keep that disabled, unless you absolutely can't. I can't see where you'd ever turn that on. So that's it. That's all the graphics settings. I did want to mention the DLSS. First and foremost, the DLSS is new. It only takes effect on the higher resolution gameplay. I'm playing at 1080p right now, so it's not even kicking in for me. It is a feature that when enabled, it's not just on all the time. It'll only kick in when it can benefit you. So if you're running 1080p and you want to turn it on, go ahead. It's not going to kick on. If it needs to, it'll kick on. For 2K gameplay, I would say that it's very rarely going to kick on, if ever, but you might get some instances where it kicks on. It's mainly going to be for the 4Kers and the 8Kers, if there's any out there, but mostly for the 4Kers. And they may notice a pretty substantial difference when they're running that. For them, run it whatever you want, whatever you can afford there. Tinker around with it. It's still very new, and people are still throwing out all different kinds of suggestions as to how you can run it, but you can see the settings, the suggestions on the right hand side. Having said that, I have mine disabled for two reasons. One, as I mentioned, I'm 1080p. It's not going to kick in for me, and I don't want to mess with it being on and having to determine whether it needs to kick on or not, so I have it disabled. Secondly, there are some recent rumors that the DLSS is affecting the aim. In fact, JGod just put something out. I haven't read it yet, but I saw the headline, and he mentioned it as well, that the DLSS is throwing off the aim. So if you got it enabled and you're noticing you're not hitting your targets like you were, or maybe you sucked and you're hitting all your targets now, it could be the DLSS. Go in, turn it off, see if you're getting better shots, because I think it's something to do with the reticle. Even though you're showing it on your target, it's not lined up because it's skewing the reticule one way or another. But like I said, I'm sure JGod's got a whole video out on it. You go check him out, or just look it up, DLSS affecting aim in Warzone, and see what that is. So for now, I've got mine disabled. If I jump up to a higher quality monitor, I might start looking into that stuff, but for now I'm leaving it like it is and the disabled. So tinker with these, see what you guys think.